and welcome everybody. Today I have a really special guest, Terry Cole. Her new book, Boundary Boss, came out yesterday, so it's hot off the press. She's a dear friend of mine. We've met over the years, as we spoke about different topics at different conferences, and our paths have crossed. And now, boy, I am deep into Boundary Boss and loving it. So you can imagine how excited I was to bring her to all of you. Welcome, Terry.
Thank you, my friend. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, well, listen, I think what we should do is, for all of you that have read TalkRx and have been working with me for many years, what I want you to know is this is something different. So what we're doing is we're taking the effective communication and who you are and breaking it down. And you've heard me talk a little bit about the inner zipper and the outer zipper. And what Terry calls them is the inner boundary and the outer boundaries. So she goes into much more depth than I have taken you into. And so what I want you to know is you're ready. You're ready for another deep dive. And I want you to start, Terry, by telling us, what is the inner boundary and the outer boundary? How would you even talk about boundaries?
Well, the way that I do talk about them is it's simple, because we have to see it as like the actions we can take, right? Because boundaries themselves are this amorphous, it seems overwhelming, like, I don't know what this is. So the way that I break it down and the way that I teach it, it's each individual, it's you, it's me, knowing our preferences, our desires, our limits, and our deal breakers, and having the ability to communicate them early and often in all situations, business, life, romantic, all of that. You know, Brene Brown simply puts it that, having good boundaries means letting the people in your life know what's okay with you and what's not okay with you. So that, and of course, I have a whole book on it, so there's more nuance than that, but that's really what we're talking about. It's knowing your own, that your preferences matter, that your limits matter. And, I started the book itself with the Boundary Boss Bill of Rights, because I really wanted everyone to be on the same page of what are our rights when it comes to boundaries? Because I feel like there's a lot of confusion about, is this really a boundary? Am I really just trying to control that other person? So if you look at the Boundary Boss Bill of Rights, it is a very, it tells you exactly, according to Terry Cole, right? Boundaries, according to me, is that these are your rights.
Well, the first thing that's coming to me is knowing where you end and somebody else begins.
Yeah.
Right. And really kind of understanding that, not to separate yourself, but more actually to keep you deeply connected over time.
Right.
Right. And
exactly.
And I know as, first of all, as a woman, second of all, being Indian, and third, being a healer and a health professional, and fourth, being a coach, right, as an executive coach. What I'd say is, for all the people listening right now, you've also said that men can also learn from this as well. So we might speak in terms of women a lot in what we're saying, but certainly everyone can benefit from this.
Yes. And if you're in a heterosexual relationship and you're a male, reading it can help you, but it also can help you really understand the person you love probably more accurately than you do right now.
Yeah. And I think it's so sad because so many well-meaning, well-intentioned leaders, health professionals, right? Parents, partners, they love whoever they're with, but the inability to do this can actually create the demise of their relationship and the outcome that they're hoping to achieve with the people that they're with.
Yes, no doubt. Because again, when you think about where do we overstep or where do others overstep, so much of the time it's driven by love. It's driven by good intentions. Like think about overfunctioning and codependency. We don't want the people we love to suffer. So we have all these ideas of what they should do, and we want to fix what we think is their problem. We don't want them to suffer, not realizing that that's their side of the street. So I make a really clear distinction in the book and the way that I teach this, like what is your side of the street? What is the other person's side of the street? And the more you know what that is, the less you will be trampling on someone else's boundaries. But can we go back to the beginning for a sec? Neha, like why the thing that was fascinating to me and why I ended up writing, why boundaries, why this book, why me, basically. Clearly, I was a boundary disaster in my life. And like many of us, I was raised to be a good girl, to be obedient, to be nice, really probably to be nice above maybe anything else. It was very important. And it was very important what it looked like. That there was, because I have 3 older sisters, and like the perception that nice girls, a nice family type of a thing. And that does not usually go along with that. That means that I was prioritizing. I was taught, as many of you were, to prioritize the way other people feel, or if someone won't like something, then I won't say it, or I'll avoid it, or I'll say yes when I want to say no. Straight up, when you think about, we were raised and praised to be self-abandoning codependents, in the service of our relationships. But as you said, like, that's not a long-term plan, because it doesn't work in the long run. And so not only were we not taught any of these skills, we really got some pretty corrupted data about boundaries and about what it means. Because right now we can say it. Everyone listening, watching, what do you think about boundaries? You're like, I don't want them to think I'm mean.
Yeah.
I don't want to be rejecting people. I don't want people to think I'm being bitchy, right?
Yeah. It's you know what it is? You're speaking really about, we worry within our families and in our close relationships about judgment. And with everybody else, we're worried about image.
Yep.
Right. And so that extends out in the world, in our professional worlds, and it really almost controls us.
Without a doubt, it dictates our behaviors. But here's the thing, so much of the time, and of course, this, and this is partly what you teach, we have all of this material in our unconscious mind. So the beginning part of the process that I'm walking people through in the book, and when I teach this in the courses, is that we have to be able to unearth, right? Like excavate our, what I call your downloaded boundary blueprint. Yeah. Because there is tons of specific reasons why we relate to boundaries in a dysfunctional way. I told you a little bit about what I learned as a child, but every one of you, right? The culture you come from, right? It is the culture you're from, more patriarchal and more expecting women to acquiesce to what someone else wants. I mean, how is authority viewed in the culture, the country? I mean, I've taught this material to women from 195 countries. Wow. And there was not one that was like, oh no, I learned this in primary school. Like, nobody does. And it's all the disease to please. And it's all of the, like you said, the fear of judgment, what it looks like, right? We don't want people to think badly of us. Yeah. But, when you say yes, when you want to say no, under the guise of trying to be nice, we really have to think about it from a straightforward point of view. Yeah. Is it nice? I mean, we're friends. Would I want you to say something because it's what I wanted to hear? Or do I value your opinion? And do I want to know you, who you actually are? Yeah. And you sharing your preferences, your desires, your limits, and your deal breakers with me, even just as a friend. That's you being brave and loving and courageous, so I can know you because I actually want to. Yeah. And I'd say, as you're talking about the boundary blueprint, I'm Indian, and wow, when I posted that this book is coming out, all of my relatives, I mean, they came out of the woodwork. Like, I don't even know, that's not who I expected to respond. And they started saying, like, we're Indian. There are no boundaries. They literally started coming straight from that blueprint. I'm a woman in this house. There are no boundaries. Like, I'm the one who's going to save everybody. And so I just started to see how that blueprint just dictates us, especially when we're unconscious of it. Yep. And I think that unless someone, I'm not anyone's guru around these things. I'm just a really accurate GPS, right? To help each person who's reading this book find the answers within their own mind, because it's really about asking the right and powerful questions that can reveal this material. And it's such a relief when you go, oh, well, this makes sense, right? If I was raised by a people-pleasing mom, let's
Yep.
say, someone who was more of a pushover, more of a chameleon when it comes to boundaries, then I look at that and go, oh, I aspire to be like this maternal impactor because that's nature. This is what happens.
Yeah.
So we don't even question it. We just go, oh, this is life. This is life as a woman. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is, I mean, think about all the things that we talk about and what we get. People talk about this like it's a good thing where they're like, she's amazing. She would give anyone the shirt off her back. And you're like, keep your shirt on, Betty. Like, why? How about some discernment? I mean, not everyone deserves your friggin' shirt,
That's right.
And meaning it's okay for you to be cold all the time. No.
Yeah, not at all. And I think another really important link in this is how you speak about how intergenerational this is. This isn't even just our mothers, right? This is societal and ancestral. And when we try to break these patterns, when it feels hard or it feels difficult, it's because it's more than just us.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. The collective consciousness, the silent agreements within family systems, within cultures, within social groups. Yeah. We have all of these silent agreements. And that, is the birthplace of more disordered boundary interactions. Yeah. And so I'm always about, in business as well, like so much proactive boundary setting can happen where we can set people up to succeed so much rather than waiting for them to not read our mind because, P.S., they're not going to, they can't. And then judging where we're like, well, they were raised right, they would have known. Or we say, oh yeah, she knew I was mad. I mean, it got cold in there. Like she knew I was side-eyeing. She knew. But did she know? She doesn't. She knows you're pissed. She doesn't know why. Yeah. Do you want to get your needs a little bit met? Right. So it's almost like communicating in this very like the passive aggressive communication, which is what we resort to when we don't have the language of direct and healthy, effective communication, which is the language of boundaries. It's so ineffective. Yeah. So we're literally, instead of being precise, we're being super obtuse. So someone can grasp it like, oh, I see that she's annoyed, but I actually don't know why. And if I did, maybe I could change my behavior. So again, it's opening up these very easy and like gentle dialogues. And I think that there's also this fear that if I become a boundary boss, like some people think it means becoming a boundary bully. And it doesn't, because if you're masterful at anything, you're doing that thing with ease and grace, right? You're doing that thing naturally and you don't need a ton of force. You just need to do it early and often and tell the truth. And when you realize that, Neha, I was thinking about this the other day about why we have this feeling about saying no to people. Let's just hit that for a minute.
Sure.
And if we say no, it's like we need to write our dissertation about why. We need to build a case like we're in court about why this over-convincing. And I think that it's really important to make the distinction between convincing and providing context.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if I say no to Vic, my husband of 25 years, like, I want him to understand me. Right. I love him. I'm not saying no to punish him, to hurt him. I want him to understand. So I give him context, not because I think I must convince him that I have a right to my no, because I'm positive I have a right to my no, but I want him to understand me. So I think that being discerning, and if you're someone who it's hard to say no, and you almost, in the book I talk about it like, people who are giving the insta yes, like the person hasn't even asked and you're like, of course, yes, great. That is, of course, obviously the beginning of a bunch of disordered boundary interactions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's almost like you don't even think you deserve to have time to think about it. And sometimes just not wanting to do something is like a perfectly legitimate reason. Maybe you just don't friggin' feel like it. And why is that not okay? Like sometimes you're just tired. You don't feel like it. Maybe you don't like the thing. I think it's powerful to say, like when a friend asks me to do something, and especially if it's something that I don't generally want to do, like outside concerts. I just don't like them. I know lots of people do. I don't. So my friends don't ask me anymore.
Yeah.
Not because they're not mad. They're not judging me. They just know. I'm like, hey, I'm a yes to you. I'm a no to Tanglewood because I don't like to be outside with people talking while I'm trying to listen to music. I can give that context. I cannot. But by sharing that, instead of suffering through a bunch of outside concert experiences that I don't want to do or being evasive or weird, my friends know who I am, you know?
Yeah, and I think it saves a lot of resentment. It saves a lot of awkwardness, sleepless nights. I would argue, as a doctor, it leads straight to your physical health.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, and I think people don't really realize that it's all connected. And I wonder if this is a little bit because we are a world that has become so short-term oriented. So right now it's about me and you. And if you ask me to do something, if I say, yes, we have harmony in this moment. Mm-hmm. We will not necessarily have harmony 5 minutes from now because automatically I'm going to start trying to figure out how I can get out of what I just said yes to. Right. And so I wonder if some of this is the short term versus the short term, long term, like double vision, being able to really see what we're intending here. What is my intention in my relationship with you? Is it to have a solid and lasting, way that now your friends know this is just something Terry doesn't love to do, but why don't we pick something else? Because she's great at, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
Right.
Right. So, but let's look at the auto reply, the auto response, because again, what we're doing throughout this process of growing these skills is we're creating internal space. Yeah. Creating space between the thought and the action, which is why there's meditation in the book and why there's breathing exercises and why self-care. I talk about it in almost every chapter because it is such a, this as a doctor, it's so important and it can be nerve-wracking. Changing your boundary dances will kick up your fight, flight, freeze, fawn response at different points with different people. There is that sense of feeling threatened by changing our relationship dance. And we're so worried. A lot of times people are so worried about the pushback. They're like, well, what do I do? Yeah. Someone is mad. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And what you're talking about is actually building self-trust. Because in those moments, I don't know how someone's going to respond. When I say no to something that you ask me to do, I don't know if you're going to blow up. I don't know if you're going to get passive aggressive.
Exactly.
You're going to tell our mutual friend what a jerk you think I am.
Right.
But whatever it is, I'm protecting against that because the one thing I can control in this moment is saying yes to you.
Right.
So if I keep Terry happy, everything's fine. So I want to talk about two things that are really, let's go one real simple and then let's go a little more complex.
Sure.
You say that like all boundaries are not equal. Like there's different kinds of boundaries. Mm-hmm. Will you talk a little bit about the different kinds of boundaries and what you see people struggling with the most?
Well, for yourself, right? So we have different categories of boundaries, right? So you have physical boundaries that can include sexual boundaries. You have mental, you have emotional, you have material. Yeah, that's it. So those are the categories. So meaning material boundaries. Do you lend money to people? Do you don't? Do you not? Do you allow people to, if you own a car, do you allow people to use that? Do you lend your clothes? Do you like to share food?
Well, what about in the book, whether you share your toothbrush? I was like, oh, right then.
Oh, yeah, me too. I was like, wait, what? That's an unbelievable story of a client of mine who grew up in a very disordered family with a lot of chaos, a lot of abuse. And actually, this was not a client. This was a friend of mine. And it just came out over lunch one day where there were, I think, 8 of them in the family. And I said something. And basically, she was like, yeah, it was in the basket on the sink. And I was like, wait, what was? She was like, the basket of toothbrushes. And I was like, wait a minute. How did you know which one was yours? And she was like, I didn't. We just all used the one that wasn't wet.
Unbelievable.
I was like, wow. And, and I grew up with 3 older sisters where something like that never would have happened.
Yeah.
But again, that friend was so unaware of what she was like boundaries. And of course that put her into having lots of relationships with overtakers because she didn't think she had any rights to any boundaries, right? As you were saying before.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we were going back to, what were we talking about?
We were talking about the different kinds of boundaries and which ones, and then I wanted to move us, once we do that, move us into high functioning codependency, because I think that's so common. But so you were talking about material boundaries.
Right. So you have a right. Let's just say you like to keep your car clean. Mm-hmm. And you have like a slobby cousin who wants to come in and eat fast food and leave their crap all over. Yep. That's a boundary violation. You have a right to say, hey, no eating in my car. Like, I don't like it. I don't eat in my car. I'm making a request that you do not. And again, we feel bad being like, well, maybe I'm just too neat or maybe I'm just too difficult. No, it's your car. It's your boundary. Yep. When you think about your physical self, a lot of times you may have someone who is let's say a close talker. Yeah. Your body and the physical space that you might require is unique to you. So if someone is in your space and you don't like it, you will naturally step back from them just without saying anything. And then if they step forward, you might say, oh, hey, Bob, I'm feeling a little crowded. Can you just back it up one step, or whatever you would say in the way that you would say it? That's how I would say it. Yeah. But again, there's nothing wrong with your need to not have someone in your space. You think about your home, right? Apartment or your house. Are there places that you don't want other people to go? Is there any place that's
I have people take their shoes off before they come in, right?
Absolutely.
So one of the things I do. And I think the fear there is, growing up, what I really noticed whenever I tried to assert a boundary, mm-hmm. and even after that, was the pushback that comes from other people. Mm-hmm. Right? It's like, it's a mockery of me. It becomes a like, oh, look at you. Like, right? Like all of a sudden it gets flipped. Mm-hmm. And so what do you do then? What do you do when that happens?
It depends on exactly what the situation is. But if you say, I make this request and they go, oh, look at you. You can say, I am, I see that you're not really taking this seriously, or I get the sense that something about this is provoking you. Because of your tone of voice, I will reiterate that I don't appreciate this, and I would like to make a simple request that you don't do that. Yeah. And so part of it is by not allowing them to hijack the narrative. Yeah. And they're trying to hook you with their provocative behavior so that you like lose it, so that you're like, why are you, listen, you acting that way doesn't change anything for me. Yeah. I will stand firm in my request. Yeah. Or sometimes it depends on the person. If someone is really sort of reacting, I can see that you're having feelings about what I'm saying.
You name it.
Exactly.
You just name it instead of react to it.
Yes.
So silence here and being able to manage the discomfort inside our own bodies at that moment is key. Because really, boundaries are about clear agreements as well, that if you're a leader, if you're a parent, or like you said with the cousin, in your car, mm-hmm. It seems like the better we know ourselves, the earlier we can, hey, Terry, I want to go on this road trip with you. I'm really excited about it. Listen, I just got to tell you, love my car. She has a name. It's Safi. And I love her to be clean. And so one of the things I'm pretty particular about is keeping her clean. Are you down with that?
Yep.
So it's like, if I do this ahead of time, suddenly it's a different energy.
Absolutely. Because what you're doing is, and in the book, I call it proactive boundary success plans. Yeah. Because we're not waiting for the person to do the wrong thing. We're literally having enough, it's really self-regard to know that the way that I want my car in this particular instance actually matters. Yeah. And I'm not going to abandon that, because then the road trip with the person is going to be filled with me feeling anxious and me feeling resentful and me making maybe a snide comment. Maybe I get passive aggressive. I don't know, because those feelings got to go somewhere. Just because we don't want to have the conversation, we don't have the power to be like, disappear, annoyance. It's not going to.
Yeah.
It will go underground. It will come out. We either displace the aggression where you're upset about this and then you take it out on someone else, whether it be an unwitting, Starbucks person or whoever, right?
Yeah.
And again, none of that does what we want it to do, which is to have us be, what is the subtitle of the book? It's the essential guide to talk true, be seen, and finally live free. And when we're not being jerked around by our fear mind, by these old things, by these unconscious processes that we're not even aware of. We're not repeating the past, because that's a whole other part of this, that you may be having, psychotherapeutically, we call it having a transference reaction, where you find yourself, you're like, how am I in the same relationship again?
Different same
exactly. This unavailable person again. Yep. So quickly, I'm going to give you a quick little tool that if you find yourself in any repeated situation that you don't want to be in, because it could be with yourself as well. But let's just say it's out there in the world. I call these repeating boundary realities. Freud would call it repetition compulsion, right? So it's me
right.
sort of
do a tool, but I'm going to give you an example. So what if we say, I get really excited about starting projects, whatever it is, and then I go gung-ho, and then I find myself like burned out, exhausted, kind of overgiving. And so when I'm in that space, what would I do?
All right. Well, there's two things we're talking about. So that when it's you,
yep.
when you're kind of falling down on yourself, when your internal boundaries
yep.
are not as strong as you want them to be, because that's what we need to follow through and stay following through.
Yeah.
That is, so there's two tools we're talking about. That one is about how to get unstuck. So that is a pattern that you don't love, that you've been experiencing within yourself. So you're going to ask,
so
say it again.
It feels like everybody during COVID is complaining of that, right? Like I was doing fine for a little while, and then now I'm just not.
Yep. So here's what you're going to ask yourself.
Okay.
When you're in that pattern, the staying stuck pattern, what do you get to not face, not feel, or not experience by staying stuck, by continuing that? This is about secondary gain, according to me, from a psychological point of view.
Yep.
Is that if we repeatedly find ourselves in an unwanted situation, there is something we're not seeing. There is this hidden, I'm going to say benefit, but that's why it's called secondary gain. It's not obvious because it's not primary gain. So could you answer that?
For me and many others, it might even be if I face that when I start a new project, I can get myself excited about this job, at least for a little while. But then as I start losing all my energy, it's like, I don't want to deal with finding another job. Like, I don't want to figure out what my actual passion is or, what that is. I just I need the paycheck. And by the way, Terry, there's no jobs right now. Like I might have that, that feeling that I can't do it. And so I don't even want to face the prospect of change right now.
Yep. Totally get it. And that makes sense because it's painful.
Yep.
It's exhausting. It's frustrating. And especially when you are so high functioning, that is a repetition that does not sit well with you personally.
Right.
Because you're a master of the universe, or you're a high functioning codependent too, which we're going to get to, but that's real. Yeah. So in any situation that you find yourself in, you can ask those questions, and there's a few more, but we can add it to, I'm going to give you guys a free gift, and I'll make sure that my team adds the secondary gain questions as a little tool on that page.
Sure. And then was there anything else? Was there a second part to that?
Well, there was a second tool.
Okay.
So with the repeating boundary realities, if you're in the relationship with the same unavailable person, let's say.
Up. Yeah, yes. Showing up again and again.
You're going to ask, who does this person remind me of? Where have I felt like this before? And why is this behavioral or the interactive dynamic? How or why is that familiar to me?
Mm.
Is it something that I saw between my parental impactors? Is it
Yep.
something that I was involved in? Is
Mhm.
it something I saw somewhere else?
Yep.
Or is it like, and then there's an added question to that where we go, okay, so when I'm in this scenario with this unavailable person and they're retreating and I'm going forward and, trying to go after them, who do I become metaphorically? And who do they
Mhm.
become?
Oh,
And right? Right?
yeah, because it goes so much farther. When you're saying this unavailable, I'm like, oh yeah, my dad was working really hard, always traveling, always gone.
Same.
I end up dating in most of my life very driven men who are achievers and ambitious and always at work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know who it mirrors. Certainly I'm used to that. And then I start complaining, just like my mom
Mm-hmm.
was complaining that you're never home,
Yep.
like, we're not connected. I have this longing, right?
Yes.
And I found that to be in the first, 45 years of my life, that pattern just kept repeating itself.
Yep.
And then what did you say about the last two questions?
Like, well, you said who do I
You
become
looked them up.
metaphorically? Who do they become? Right. So
Yeah.
you
And,
could,
and they move
yeah,
farther away. Like,
of course.
yeah, like the distance becomes greater.
Right. Because here's the thing. The reason why those three Qs, that's what that tool is called, like meaning the three Qs for clarity, three questions for clarity. When you find yourself in this repeating reality that you're like, what the hell? Why am I here?
Yeah.
That why it matters is that when you start to go, oh, I see this repetition. Now I'm going to see the red flags sooner instead of being so comfortable in that groove because it's so familiar.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's funny, when I was younger, I thought that I had outsmarted mine because I also had an unavailable father, workaholic type of person. And I remember, first saying to my therapist, oh, I love that, I'm just dating all these European, would go on vacation and like meet these warm, verbal European men, Greek.
Very far away.
And she was like, okay. And so I was like, I beat the repetition basically in my mind. I was like, they're
Mm.
nothing like my father. And she's like, but Tara, they live on other continents.
Yeah, it's like that
So
tricky boundary blueprint you were speaking about. It's
yes,
like playing itself out in a unique way.
yes. And she's like, so how do you feel? I was like, alone, longing,
Mm.
sad, unfulfilled. She's like, right.
Oh, yes. Oh, gosh, Terry, that is so true. Yeah, and what the other thing I want to make sure we touch on before we wrap this up is
Yeah.
I know a lot of people listening are high functioning codependents.
Mhm.
And so can you talk a little bit about that? And then
Sure.
we'll wrap this up.
Well, the reason I actually came up with a new name
Mm.
because the women in my therapy practice and myself included, there was this sense, if I would say to a client, okay, so this interaction we're talking about, I see there's codependency in this behavioral dynamic that's going on. And they would be like, no, dude, you don't get it. I'm not dependent on squat. Everyone's dependent on me. I am doing all the things. Like, no, everyone comes to me. I'm the rock. I'm the solid one. I was like, right. That doesn't make you not dependent. So I almost felt like there was this bias against sort of like the old school Melody Beatty, which is, seminal text, amazing, but,
Yeah.
codependent no more.
Yeah.
And so then I started really getting into my clients and my own life. And I was like, here's the thing. High functioning codependency is different because it's very hard to see because it happens in this population, in my experience of women who are so high functioning. So it's almost like, they used to say about Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers did everything Fred Astaire did, but she did it backwards and in heels. It's kind of like that. This group of women
Yeah.
who are really doing it all, like masters of the universe, CFOs, COOs, famous people, whoever,
Yeah.
but they're doing it at the expense of themselves because they are still, like, according to me, what is high functioning codependency? It is being overly invested in the feeling states, the decisions, the outcomes of the people that you care about, to the point though, where it's detrimental to your internal peace or to your physical wellness, your financial wellness, if you're giving people money. So listen, we're all invested in all those things of the people we love.
And lead.
Say
right?
Again?
And lead the people we love and lead, right? Because we can do this at work too.
Yes, we do.
Where we're doing their work, we're picking things up, we're covering things up for them, right? There's ways that we're expending, what I really like you spoke about was like emotional labor of love, like something like the emotional weight and work that we are taking on as our own.
Yes.
So this is so fascinating because it's so tricky. And I have to tell you, whatever you just did by making it high functioning codependency, you're right. I would have had a visceral reaction to codependent. Like, I'm not codependent, but when you wrote high functioning, I was like, oh, like that's me. Right. So I think that tweak there takes the trickiness out of it and kind of just names it.
Right.
So so go ahead. I cut you off a little bit there.
No, but it's totally true. Here's the thing. It's exhausting. And what I would see in my practice is these women coming in and you're just like your whole life is checking boxes. And they were also coming in presenting with autoimmune disorders and all these other things, TMJ, having shingles, like all of these stress-related illnesses, because they were so terrified to like let any of the balls drop, not realizing that half the balls that they had in the air were not their own. And you're not doing a favor. Here's the thing. It is our fear of allowing other people to run their own lives. I mean, think about it. Codependency itself is a covert or overt bid for control. That's what it is. We even though maybe it's from love, I felt like mine was, I'm sure yours is, like, I wasn't seeing myself as trying to dominate people. Yeah. But the deal is someone else's life being a dumpster fire is definitely causing me stress and anxiety. And I don't want to feel stress and anxiety. Yeah. So I'm misfixed. I was back in the day, like I have ideas, I have thoughts, I'll make a phone call for you, I'll help you. Then I'm also all pissed off when they don't take my advice that they didn't even friggin' ask me for. You know what I mean? Like, it's a vicious cycle.
Yes.
And there's a way to break out of it. So just know that one thing at a time, when you start to get really clear about why you're doing what you're doing when it comes to your boundaries, it is so much easier. And that's in the process of unearthing the boundary blueprint. It's so much easier to stop. And you can also I have a free quiz online, just boundaryquiz.com. Okay. 13 questions, people can go. And that would tell you, are you the ice queen, the pushover, the chameleon, the peacekeeper, the powerhouse?
Or boundary.
Exactly.
What flavor are you?
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I think that is just beautiful, because I think when you can really recognize it, make it that specific, people are really going to see how they can regain their personal power so quickly from understanding this.
Yeah.
So I just want to say thank you to all of you for your time, for your energy. Terry, you have just been a blessing. This book is powerful. So I just want to say to women especially, we are working through everything from Me Too to, today we're working through, some verdicts that are coming out, and, all these ways our society is changing. Mm-hmm. And we can blame the outside world if we'd like to, or you can take your power back and you can lead from the inside out. And that's what we're advocating for.
Hallelujah.
So if you have not done it yet, I am going to advocate that you pick up your copy of Boundary Boss. Terry has a bunch of great gifts that are also going to be available for you. Do you want to tell us a little bit?
Yes. Well, two things. If you get the book and then go to boundarybossbook.com, and then there's still a whole bunch of beautiful bonuses there for, just to help you on your journey. But for your crew, we are doing something about boundaries and codependency. So it's really an expansion on the conversation that we were just having, ways for you to really get clear about where you are sort of on that spectrum, so that you can potentially make some shifts, step back a little bit, and regain some of your energy and power. So you're going to find that. It's a video and a beautiful downloadable guide that these are questions you're going to answer at boundaryboss.me/Neha, Neha, because that's easy enough to remember. And it's about boundaries and codependency. But I want to say thank you so much for having me, my friend. I really appreciate it. Our work is so intertwined. So I'm looking forward to your next one.
Yeah, well, my next book is going to be on burnout. And I have to tell you, burnout is boundaries.
Absolutely.
Burnout and boundaries are like this. So you are going to I just opened my book, but like, this is what the book looks like. Okay. So when you underline more of it than you don't, you should pay some attention there. So thank you, Terry. Thank you for joining us, and blessings.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate you.